What's the story, Morning Glory? What is up, Buttercup? Thank you so much for clicking on my channel and for joining me in this really quick conversation about Adrian Peterson. Now, I really don't make videos on social commentary or current events, but when something really moves me, I have to speak on it. So Adrian Peterson is a NFL football player. He's played for various teams. I think he's won various accolades. So I guess in his professional career, he's pretty much accomplished. Now, an article came out, or several articles came out, and I think TMZ broke the story over the weekend that he was arrested for domestic violence on an airplane that was leaving Los Angeles on its way to Houston. So the plane had pulled out of the gate out of LAX and didn't even take off. It had to turn right back around, return back to the gate because there was an incident on the plane that involved Adrian Peterson and his wife, Ashley Peterson. I'm not exactly sure what led up to this disagreement or this argument or this altercation, but he was, witnesses say that he was trying to pull the wedding ring off of his wife's finger. They got into an argument and it became physical because he was trying to forcibly remove her wedding ring from her finger. And the plane had to turn back to the gate. The authorities were called. The FBI was contacted, and Adrian Peterson had to be removed from the plane. So he was facing felony domestic violence charges. Well, the newest articles that came out today, which is Tuesday, February the 15th, is that he will not be indicted, or he will not, those charges were dropped. The felony charges were completely dropped. Now, Los Angeles may choose to pick up misdemeanor domestic violence charges against him, but for right now, the felony charges were dropped. So what I want to say about this is a couple of things. When I read the article, at first I had no idea who Adrian Peterson was because I don't watch football like that. So, as I was reading the article, it mentioned that back in 2014, he was arrested for beating his 4-year-old son with what the articles called a tree branch. I'm pretty sure it was probably more like a switch, but the articles that I read all called it a tree branch. And he was convicted of that, and he was placed on probation for that, and he was also temporarily suspended from the NFL for those charges. So when I read that, I was like, oh yeah, I remember this case. I remember this very, very well because I remember reading that back in 2014 and thinking to myself that this was really excessive to beat a 4-year-old with a switch or a tree branch or whatever it was, because I couldn't imagine what a 4-year-old could do to deserve such punishment. I was really flabbergasted that somebody would do that to a 4-year-old. So when these most recent charges came up against him, I didn't know who he was until I read those articles, and then I was like, okay, so this guy has a serious issue. He has a very serious issue. Just because the charges were dropped, the felony charges were dropped, to me, it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that whatever happened was, any less than what it was. I think this guy is an abuser. I think that he has a horrible temper problem, and he kind of downplayed everything, saying that, oh, they arrested me because my wife had a scratch on her finger. Can you believe it? They put me in jail because my wife had a scratch on her finger. Okay, you forcibly tried to remove a ring from her finger on an airplane in front of Lord knows how many other people. This person has an anger problem, and I'm pretty sure that he probably is pretty volatile in his household behind closed doors. If you will act like this on an airplane in front of other people, where you just don't care about what anybody says, you don't care how this is looking to anybody else, you're putting your hands on another human being and trying to remove a piece of jewelry from their body, and you think that this is perfectly okay, and you want to blame other passengers for making this more than what it was, because he said that there was a passenger, a female passenger nearby, who made a big deal about it, and it really wasn't that big of a deal. I don't think that if y'all were quietly having a disagreement, the feds would have been called. or other passengers would have brought this to the attention of the airplane staff, who then later contacted the authorities. If you and your wife were just having a regular disagreement, y'all wouldn't be the first. Plenty of people have had disagreements on airplanes. Y'all wouldn't be the first. But for you to try to forcefully remove her ring from her finger, it was beyond just a regular disagreement. It was beyond just a regular argument. This was an attack. This was a physical attack on your wife on a plane in front of countless of other people. And he thinks that there was nothing wrong with this. They were just having a disagreement. His wife later comes out and releases a statement after the charges were dropped, I think, or I'm not sure if it was after or before, but she releases a statement saying that they had a verbal argument. Unfortunately, it took place on a plane. He didn't hit or strike her. It was a private matter just between the two of them, and that she wants her privacy respected. And right now, they're just trying to focus on their children. If you want your privacy respected, and this was a private disagreement between you and your husband, why is it taking place on a public forum, in a public space? If it was something that was very private between the two of you, what would cause this private argument to now be international news? So y'all were getting loud, y'all were acting reckless, and now y'all are talking about, oh, it was a private disagreement and we want everyone to respect our privacy right now. Then keep your private disagreements private. If he could have just controlled himself and waited until y'all got to y'all's destination, then whatever, nobody would have known. But the plane didn't even leave the gate before he started acting a fool, which means that this probably started when y'all were still in the airport, or his anger is that quick that from the time that he sat down to the time that the plane started to reverse, to reverse its way away from the gate, he lost his mind and he is acting reckless on a plane. And then in 2014, he beats his 4-year-old with a tree branch or a switch. And it was to the point where he had to get arrested for it. Now, I'm pretty sure that authorities can distinguish between reasonable discipline, which is permissible under the law, and abuse. And I think for a 4-year-old to be beaten with a switch, it was just, to me, completely uncalled for and just really unacceptable. So he got probation for that. Charges were dropped in this situation with his wife because, the scratch on her finger was no big deal. And I'm pretty sure she wasn't willing to testify against him or, to press any charges against him. That's what I meant to say. She wasn't going to press any charges against him. So basically, time and time again, he's getting a slap on the hand. Authorities are letting him, get away with these horrible actions, and it's not going to stop. It's not going to stop. And I just think that it's really pathetic and really sad that he could not control himself on an airplane. You couldn't wait the 2 hours from LA to Houston to continue on with your argument with your wife until you touched Houston, because he was traveling from LA to Houston, and that's probably about maybe 2.5, maybe 3 hour flight. You could not control yourself for a couple of hours. You had to run amok on a plane and then wonder why everybody around you is looking at you crazy and why you were almost charged with felony domestic violence. And I think he is still currently in the NFL. He's not retired. I think he's still an active player in the NFL. You're willing to risk it, your whole entire career, which you worked so hard for your entire life, because you cannot control your temper. He was suspended in 2014. Now, if he had hit a woman with a tree branch or a switch, I'm pretty sure the NFL would have kicked him to the curb. But because it was a defenseless 4-year-old who couldn't defend themselves, who couldn't do anything but just sit there and take it from this grown man, they just give him a slap on the hand. And that's all I have to say. Thank you so much for joining me. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will definitely talk to you later.